The room felt normal on the surface, but something quiet and heavy hung in the air. People talked, laughed, and moved around as usual, yet there was a clear distance between the two of them. He stood near the window, hands in his pockets, staring outside as if the street held all the answers. He listened to every word around him, but his eyes never once met hers. She noticed it right away. At first she told herself it was nothing. Maybe he was tired, maybe he was distracted. But as minutes passed, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Whenever she spoke, he turned his head slightly away. When she moved closer, he found a reason to step aside. It felt deliberate, and that hurt more than she wanted to admit. They had known each other for years, not strangers, not casual friends. There was history there, shared moments, shared struggles, and promises that once felt solid. That history made the silence heavier. If this had been anyone else, she might have laughed it off. But with him, every small action carried weight. Others in the room sensed the tension too. Conversations slowed when they stood near each other. Someone tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but it fell flat. He smiled politely, still refusing to look her way. The smile didn't reach his eyes. It looked practiced, like something he had learned to use to keep questions away. Inside, he felt exhausted. Avoiding her wasn't easy. In fact, it took effort. Every time he felt her presence, memories rushed back. Late talks, quiet understanding, and moments where he gave more than he ever said out loud. Looking at her now felt dangerous. One glance might break the control he worked so hard to keep. She, on the other hand, felt invisible. That feeling stirred something sharp in her chest. She replayed recent conversations in her mind, trying to find where things went wrong. There had been no big fight, no clear ending. Just distance. And distance without explanation felt cruel. She tried one last time to catch his eye, stepping directly into his line of sight. He shifted again, pretending to check his phone. That was the moment her patience snapped. The confusion turned into frustration, and the frustration into resolve. She straightened her posture, her heart pounding louder than the room around her. She was done guessing. Whatever this was, she needed answers. Even if the truth hurt, silence hurt more. She took a breath, ready to speak, unaware that the question she was about to ask would change everything for both of them. She didn't raise her voice at first. She simply spoke his name, firm enough to cut through the noise in the room. The laughter nearby faded as people sensed something serious was about to happen. He froze for a brief second, then slowly turned his body, but his eyes stayed low, fixed on the floor. That small movement was enough to confirm her fear. He really was avoiding her. Not by accident, not because he didn't notice. He was choosing not to look at her, and that choice hurt more than any harsh word could have. She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel her presence. "What's going on?" she asked quietly. Her tone wasn't angry yet, but it was tight, holding back emotion. He didn't answer. He shifted his weight and took a slow breath, as if he were bracing himself for something. The silence stretched. It made her feel exposed, like she was the only one standing still while the world waited. A few people nearby pretended to check their phones or find excuses to move away, giving them space. Everyone could tell this was not a private moment anymore. She crossed her arms, trying to steady herself. "You won't even look at me," she said. This time there was pain in her voice. "Did I do something? Or are you just done pretending I exist?" He swallowed hard. His jaw tightened, but still he said nothing. Inside, his thoughts were loud and messy. He knew that once he spoke, there would be no turning back. He had avoided this moment because he wasn't sure she was ready to hear the truth. And if he was honest with himself, he wasn't sure he was ready to say it. Her frustration finally boiled over. "Why won't you look at me?" she demanded. The words came out sharper than she planned, echoing through the space. The room went quiet. Every sound seemed to stop at once. For the first time, he lifted his head slightly. Not enough to meet her eyes, but enough for her to see the tension on his face. He looked tired in a way sleep couldn't fix, the kind of tired that comes from holding things in for too long. She waited, her heart racing. Part of her hoped he would deny everything, laugh it off, say she was imagining things. That would be easier. But another part of her needed honesty, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. He took a deep breath and finally raised his eyes. Not to her face, but just past her shoulder. "If I look at you," he said slowly, "I won't be able to keep quiet anymore." The words landed heavily between them. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. She didn't fully understand what he meant yet, but she could feel the shift. Whatever he was about to say next was something he had been holding back for a long time. And once it was said, things would never go back to the way they were. The room stayed silent after his words. She searched his face, trying to understand what he meant, but his expression was guarded. He finally turned toward her fully, though his eyes still struggled to stay steady. It felt like he was forcing himself to face something he had avoided for far too long. "I didn't plan to say this," he began, his voice low and careful. "I tried to keep things normal. I thought distance would make it easier for both of us." He paused, rubbing his hands together as if warming them. "But pretending doesn't work forever." She felt a tight knot form in her chest. This wasn't anger anymore. This was something deeper. She could hear it in his tone, the way his words came slowly, measured, as if each one cost him something. "When I look at you," he continued, "I remember every time I stayed quiet to keep the peace, every time I said yes when I should have said no. I remember thinking it would change, that someday you'd notice how much I was giving." His eyes finally met hers for a brief moment before drifting away again. Her breath caught. She hadn't expected that. She had always believed things between them were balanced, even fair. Hearing this version of the past felt like someone turning on a light in a room she thought she knew. "I don't blame you," said quickly, as if sensing her reaction. "That's the hardest part. You didn't force me. I chose it. I chose to stay silent. But choices have weight, and I've been carrying them alone." She wanted to interrupt, to explain, to defend herself. But something told her to listen. This wasn't an attack. It was a release. He took a shaky breath. "So when you ask why I won't look at you, it's because I'm afraid. Afraid that if I do, I'll start hoping again, and I can't afford that anymore." The words hit her harder than she expected. Hoping. She had never realized how much hope he had placed in her without ever saying it out loud. Her anger faded, replaced by a slow, heavy understanding.
"I didn't know," she whispered, more to herself than to him. The room felt smaller now, like the walls had moved closer.
He nodded slightly. "I know. That's why I kept quiet for so long. But silence doesn't protect anyone. It just delays the truth." She stood there, frozen, replaying moments from the past with new meaning. The way he always showed up, the way he listened, the way he gave without asking for anything back. All the signs she had missed. For the first time, she understood why he couldn't look at her. It wasn't because he didn't care. It was because he cared too much. And that truth left her unable to speak. The room slowly filled with sound again. But between them, everything had already changed. She stayed still, her mind racing while her body refused to move. His words kept repeating in her head, each one heavier than the last. The room felt louder now, yet everything between them was quiet. She wanted to say something meaningful, something that could ease the tension, but every sentence she formed felt too small. He waited, not pushing, not filling the silence. That alone told her how long he had learned to wait. She noticed the way his shoulders were slightly tense, like he was ready to leave at any moment. The thought of him walking away without another word made her chest tighten. "I never meant to make you feel that way," she finally said. Her voice was soft, unsure. It sounded different from how she had imagined it would. Apologies were easy when they were general, but this felt personal, like touching a bruise she hadn't known existed. He nodded once, slow and careful. "I know," he replied. "Intent doesn't erase impact. I had to learn that the hard way." There was no bitterness in his tone, just calm honesty. That calmness made it harder for her to argue or defend herself. She looked away, staring at a spot on the wall as memories surfaced. Times she had leaned on him without asking how he was holding up. Moments she had assumed he would always be there. She saw them now through a different lens, and the realization stung. "I wish you had told me," she said. It wasn't an excuse, more a quiet regret. "I tried," he answered gently, "in small ways, in pauses. In things I didn't say," he sighed. "But I needed you to see it without me begging." That word hit her harder than anything else. Begging. She swallowed, feeling the weight of it settle in. She had been so sure of her own struggles that she hadn't noticed his. Around them, people had slowly drifted back to their conversations, though their voices stayed low. Life moved on, as it always did. But for her, time felt paused. She realized this moment wasn't about fixing the past. It was about facing it. She took a step closer, careful not to crowd him. "What happens now?" she asked. It was an honest question, free of demand. He thought for a moment. "Now I stop pretending I'm okay with less than honesty," he said. "And you get to decide what you do with the truth." She nodded slowly. There was no anger left in her, only understanding mixed with sadness. She knew things wouldn't simply go back to how they were. Some things, once seen clearly, couldn't be unseen. He met her eyes again, this time holding her gaze. It wasn't painful like before. It was calm, steady. She realized then that the distance between them wasn't about space. It was about awareness. And now that she finally saw it, there was no going back to ignorance. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything that had finally been said as he stood there for a moment longer, both aware that this was the end of something, even if neither of them said it out loud. The air felt lighter now, but also emptier. Truth had a way of doing that. It cleared space, but it also showed what had been missing all along. He was the first to move. Not in a rush, not dramatic, just a small step back, creating room between them. "I don't want this to turn into another promise we can't keep," he said. "I needed to say my part, that's all." She nodded, understanding more than she wanted to. Part of her wanted to reach out, to ask him to stay and try again, but she knew that asking now would come from guilt, not growth, and he deserved better than that.
"I'm glad you told me," she said quietly, "even if it hurts."
Vi kan just this secretional. Aften militæret med fast om refusion and orders become spread to a competition for virtue. They shared one last look. This time he didn't look away. There was no fear in his eyes anymore, no tension, just calm acceptance. She realized then that the man standing in front of her wasn't the same one she had grown used to. He had changed while she wasn't paying attention. As he walked away, the noise of the room filled the space he left behind. People laughed again. Someone called out his name from across the room, and he answered without hesitation. Life moved forward just like that. She stayed where she was, letting the moment settle. She replayed the conversation in her head, not to argue with it, but to learn from it. She saw clearly now how easy it was to overlook quiet effort, how comfort could slowly turn into blindness. Later that night, when she was alone, the weight of it truly hit her. There were no distractions then, no faces to read, just her thoughts and the truth she had asked for. She realized that being seen wasn't just about someone looking at you, it was about understanding the cost of their presence. Days passed, they didn't talk. There were no long messages, no dramatic follow-ups, just space. And in that space, she began to notice changes in herself. She listened more, she asked questions she once assumed didn't matter. She paid attention to silence. As for him, he felt lighter, not happy in a loud way, but steady. He no longer felt the need to explain himself or hide his feelings. Walking away hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. They never had another moment like that again. No final closure, no reunion scene, just two people shaped by a single honest conversation. And sometimes that is enough. The question she asked stayed with her long after, not because of the words, but because of the answer. And the answer changed how she looked at people forever.